Okay, so Dave, welcome back to Mea Culpa. So good to have you. So much to talk about. The hour goes by way too quickly, so I'm going to jump right in it. Dave, I want to start with the Epstein files. Trump waves them off as a Democratic hoax. How dangerous is it when a president dismisses sworn testimony and evidence, not to mention, of course, the victim's own words, as fiction?
Michael, it's really good to see you and get back to work with you because we need to. I will tell you, I worked at the Miami Herald. The Miami Herald later broke a lot of these stories, haunting stories about women, about girls being abused by Epstein and his cronies. Where are the files? Trump promised those files. His MAGA base, some of them, clamored for those files. Why is his attorney general making deals, sub rosa, under the table, whatever you want to call it, about these? It's not that complicated. We should know what happened. I, like you, have questions about how Epstein happened to die in Rikers in New York, but let's talk about the files. They should be public knowledge because women and girls were abused, their lives were ruined. And there's no way and Congress has done nothing about this, surprisingly.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think he committed suicide at Rikers. I think, in fact, it was over at MCC or something.
Oh,
yeah, Metropolitan
right.
Correctional Center. Yeah.
But
MCC. I really want to just put it more into context as the cousin of the famous Roy Cohn. I guess my predecessor.
Mm-hmm.
So much of Donald Trump's personality has been formed as a result of the relationship between your cousin and my former boss. Is this something that Roy would have said to him, even in a scenario like this with the raping of children, that you use the matter to your benefit, and then when it, of course, needs to come out, instead you discredit it, you dismiss it?
Yeah, Michael, I'll answer that and I'll just give you a sentence of background. So, yes, this is exactly out of the Roy Cohn mentorship playbook for Donald Trump. Roy Cohn, your younger listeners don't know, but he was a brilliant and evil attorney who mentored Trump. And he taught Trump that you do three things to get success. Not success the way you and I would define it, but the way Trump defines it. You never admit defeat. You attack, and you delay and distract. Well, that's actually four things, whatever it may be. But that's the Roy Cohn playbook. So look what Trump did. He used something to go after other people to make a smokescreen. And then he happens to go meet Putin right when the Epstein files are really heating up. He happens to call in National Guard to DC. All these distractions are pure Roy Cohn manipulation. And you know what? Roy, for those who don't know, met Trump in the 70s and mentored him through when Roy died in the 1980s. But it's actually much more useful to use those techniques now when we have a nation that has ADHD, that can't keep track of things. It has Twitter and it has all the things that weren't around then. Then you would wake up and you'd read something in the Post or the Daily News or the Times, or you wait for a week and you read it in Newsweek, or maybe you see it on TV. And now we're bombarded with things. And so Trump's ADD is our nation's ADD.
Interesting. So let me ask you this then. Why do you think that Trump feels the need to frame Epstein's crimes as partisan warfare instead of just confronting the fact that his circle is implicated?
Michael, it defies normal logic. It defies the way politicians have worked in DC or semi worked in DC for a couple hundred years. Basically, Trump has decided that everything is a partisan battle, whether it's redistricting or in Texas, or whether it's measles, for God's sake, measles. And he blames the Democrats. He blames the liberals. This isn't a political thing. We know that wealthy people, Democrats and Republicans, were tied to Jeffrey Epstein. You would think that the president of the United States, seeking a better future, seeking some kind of solace, some kind of national kind of conversation about how we treat each other, would say, let's release all the records, instead of, oh, these are Democrats, these are liberals. It's really upsetting to all of us. And I, Michael, you and I disagree, frankly, about what's in those files. I think there's some things tying Donald Trump to that. I actually think that I have this theory that Robert Kennedy Jr. was so heinous and so ugly that Jeffrey Epstein rejected him from coming over. But that's my theory. But I'm joking. But it's really amazing how they're about to have this conversation in Congress, and then Mike Johnson says, "Hey guys, why don't you go home and just take a little extra summer break and enjoy yourselves and go raise some more money?" And so Congress, the bunch of wimps that they are, disappears, and the issue is dropped. And then there's a Putin meeting, as I said, and whatever other ADHD stirrups Trump has done. We have not lost track of this thread as the media, as a public, but we are starting to.
So it's funny that you say that, because we do disagree on that. I've been very public in my statements that I do not believe that Trump was a participant for several different reasons. One, I don't think he's comfortable in his own skin. And from only my firsthand knowledge, because I can only base it off of what I know. And so many of my listeners and my subscribers over on Substack or my YouTube channel, they get angry at me. What are you angry at me for? Because I have a difference of opinion? At the end of the day, we will all know if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But everybody manages to have an opinion. Why do I say that I don't believe that he was part of that massaging bullshit and so on that Epstein created, which was really the foray into the rape of these children, right? First he had them massage, him or his guests and so on, and then it became obviously the rape. I remember when Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, was caught at one of these tug and rub places, right? These massage parlors. And I remember Trump turning around and talking to me about it and saying, yeah, they would never catch me in a place like that. He goes, I don't do massages. And I said, funny, because I too have never had a massage. I don't like the concept of somebody touching me. My wife can give me a massage. I actually ask if she rub my neck all the time because I got like a fractured disc in my neck. So, or to take the hypervolt or something like that. But I'm not into that thing where, you're either you're nude or in your underwear and you have a blanket over you and somebody's massaging with oils. I don't like the feel of oil either. So we had that conversation, which again, it's the reason that I say the things that I do. It's only from my firsthand contact, my knowledge from conversation with Trump, that I make these assessments. Now, while I believe that people don't generally change their persona, is it possible that he was? Is it possible that he's in the file? Absolutely. Now, some people have even gone on and said that maybe it's not Donald. Maybe it's Melania who's in the file. Maybe it's, somebody else that's extremely important to Trump. And something, Dave, that you know as well as I do, very few people are actually important to him. Certainly, he's important to himself. That's number one. Would be protecting Melania at this point because she is the first lady? Sure. Is that a possible theory? Yeah. But that's what it is. It's merely a theory. And I keep telling people, let's stop pretending that we have half a fucking clue, because we don't know what's in that file, but we will if and when they release it, unredacted, except for the names of the victims.
Well, there's rumors are changing it. But Michael, I want to be clear. You know him, and I know I met him in those days when he was with Roy Cohn. I'll mention that later. But he is the ultimate germaphobe. He didn't even like to shake hands back then. So you're right about that. I'm not saying, listen, I don't know what's in the files or who's in the files. I'm saying that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of money. He spread it around. He had a lot of young women who he knew. He introduced people to them, not always at his place, maybe not as his island, maybe not his townhouse. I just have a feeling that somehow, because Trump is so tied to so many people, that there's something about him, somehow, money, woman, something in the file. Of course, he didn't go get a massage. I mean, well, anyway, who would do that? It's disgusting. But anyway, Jeffrey Epstein was really good at sort of getting with rich people and powerful people, which Trump was back then. But I want to just explain something to your newer, younger folks out here, because you have such a wonderful audience and so many downloads and so many things. Roy Cohn, as I said, was a big consigliere, big lawyer, fixer in the...
A consigliere.
50s, 60s, 70s. Anyway, he met Donald Trump in the 1970s, early 1970s at a nightclub. Trump asked him for some help because the Justice Department then justifiably was going after Trump and his family for excluding black people from renting at some crummy apartments they owned. Roy became a mentor and basically his guide for years until Roy died in 1986. But the important thing is that, well, not the important, the detour side thing is that Roy was my dad's cousin. I was a journalist. I was a student getting to know Roy, follow him. I didn't agree with him, but I thought it was a really interesting example of how power worked in New York back then. Roy would go on to cut business deals for Trump. In fact, there's people know about the Trump Tower. The reason that got built, frankly, was that Roy Cohn negotiated $20 million in tax abatements for that to happen. That doesn't sound like a lot now. That was a huge deal back then because Roy knew the right people in New York government. Roy introduced Donald Trump to an up-and-coming publisher of the New York Post named Rupert Murdoch, who was not then. There was no Fox TV then. There was none of that stuff. Roy introduced Donald Trump to Richard Nixon, who was the former president at that time. And he introduced him to Ronald Reagan, who was running for president in the 80s. There's so many nexus and so many ties.
By the way, he also introduced him to Fat Tony Salerno, which is the only reason that some of his properties were built. Fat Tony Salerno controlled all the concrete on the base in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Right. Not only did he introduce him and make that possible, but Trump, in his way, got a discount from Fat Tony for concrete when other people couldn't even get, other builders couldn't get it. It goes on and on. And he knew the cardinals of the Catholic Church. I mean, Roy knew all these people, and he, for whatever reason, we could go into sort of psychology, but Trump saw him as a father figure. Roy liked him in some ways we don't really know. And it was not reciprocated. Roy was gay, for those who don't know. But he saw this then handsome, young, blonde guy, and he mentored him and helped him in every way possible. And the reason we have Trump today is because Roy crafted him and created him and nurtured him. There's no doubt about that. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, because my cousin, my family's cousin, gave us what we have today. And Michael, you know that I lived as a journalist in Mexico. I lived in Colombia. I lived in Brazil. I spent a lot of my time as a journalist overseas. I used to say when Mexico had elections and I was covering them and they were like so tainted, I was like, oh, so glad I'm from the US. When Colombia had upheavals and car bombs and politicians being shot in the street, I was like, it's so great to be from North America, from the United States. Like, we have a real functioning democracy. And now, Michael, I have friends in all those countries. They just visited me, and I'm embarrassed by this country. I'm embarrassed by what we have allowed to happen in 8 months, especially. It's humiliating and it's scary. I've been to Russia. Okay. You have too. I've been to some countries.
I've never been to Russia.
You missed some really good.
That was the allegations.
I forgot about that. You didn't go. Okay. Well, you can go some other time. We're all going to be deported to Siberia anyway. So but what ICE is doing right now, today, as you and I are speaking, there's a construction project going up in Georgia for Hyundai. ICE just rounded up 500 South Korean workers. These are hardworking people, Michael. Where I live, ICE has been rounding up the Central American guy who works for a bagel shop, and he has a job that my kids and your kids don't want to get up at 3 a.m. in January and turn on the ovens in a bagel shop. I'm sorry. This is really scary what's happening in this country. He's decimating, he's destroying one institution after another. And nobody, not the Supreme Court, not the Republican Congress, not even the Democrats is standing up to him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why our job numbers are as poor as they are today. But I want to ask you this also, something that I'm curious how, once again, Roy's impact in Donald's life would translate into the fact that Trump wants to rename the Department of Defense as the Department of War. What does that, to you, Dave, reveal about his obsession with power and militarism? And again, how does this relate to something that Roy would have instilled in him? Because clearly the term defense and the term war are kind of like diametrically opposed.
Completely. Michael, Roy Cohn, and I'm going to say it again for those who are just tuning in. Roy Cohn, my cousin, was an evil manipulator, but he was brilliant when it came to messaging, to words. At a time when there was no social media, when there was no Facebook, when there was no Instagram, he was all those things because he would constantly send little things to the New York Post, little media, little snippets of information. He would get on TV and denounce people. He would go to trials and make fun of people. And he was always attacking. And he was brilliant at using words. Brilliant, much better than Trump is, by the way. He was much more articulate. But Trump learned the power of a phrase. Department of, the Department of War. That's something we had in the 30s and 40s. That's from Germany, for God's sake. I mean, that's really scary. If you have a Department of War, that's a mission statement. That means we are getting ready to go to war. Right now, we're not going to war to help Ukraine, as you were saying on your podcast this morning. We're not going to war to go after Putin. We're not going to war to help democracies around the world destroy. We're going to war in our own country. In Los Angeles, they're sending troops. Now they're saying to Chicago. In D.C., great. The courts have come out against it. The lesson from Roy Cohn is you just ignore the courts. You ignore the law and you just keep plowing ahead, and they can't keep track of you if you distract and you lie.
Yeah, very, very true. Look, I also believe that having Department of War is sort of psychologically creating a scenario that when he declares that there's a war taking place in America, right, by migrants or, by the Democratic Party, that's why we're not going to have a 2026 midterm election or a 2028. I mean, that's what I believe. I mean, it just makes sense. Well, we're now using the Department of War in order to, quell something that maybe doesn't even exist.
Yes.
Like the claims he's making in Chicago or, the claims that he's making in New York City.
Yes.
That's what I think that it's basically the setup.
Listen, Michael, you saw that cabinet meeting the other day leading up to Labor Day where they fawned over him. I mean, I told you, I've been in Russia. I've been in autocracies. I've never seen something so incredibly. Maybe I have not been in North Korea. Maybe that happens in North Korea because if you don't say those things in your government official, you'll be shot or hanged. They fawned over him. It was so embarrassing. These are adults saying, Mr. President, you're the best thing that ever happened to the United States. You're the best thing that happened since Jesus Christ. Come on.
And
That's
if you
crazy.
think that's bad, Dave, now watch these tech and finance folk that were at a dinner table with Trump and Melania. Sitting directly to his left was Melania, to his right was Mark Zuckerberg, and directly next to Melania, you had Bill Gates. I mean, they were surrounded by titans of tech, by titans of finance, and each one, Mr. President, we want to thank you for your leadership, for your ingenuity, for your commitment to our industry. Basically, what they were saying is, let me blow some more bullshit up your ass, right? Simply because we are racking in the billions thanks to you, opening up certain capabilities for us in terms of power and energy in order, because they're all into now the AI, and the AI, as you know, just uses an enormous amount of power. They're basically fawning over him. You're talking about people like a Bill fucking Gates, for God's sakes. You have guys that are across the table that are sitting. You know who wasn't there, of course, was Elon Musk.
Yeah,
because he was kicked out of the club.
Yeah.
Because this entire thing that you saw with the secretaries, the cabinet, the same things that you saw now with these tech and these finance titans, it is a loyalty test.
Yes.
When you get invited to the table, it's not about doing something great for America. It's not about building something stronger for America's future. It's basically all about padding their own pockets.
Yes. Sycophantic suck-ups. But Michael, I was thanking you, and I want to say that I just heard some Democrats saying, we're going to redistrict in the next election. You got to be kidding me. There's not going to be a midterm election, and you know that. You've predicted the future year after year after year with cynicism and accuracy. They're preparing to find an excuse to cancel the election.
If you're someone who values choice in your money, your goals, and your future, then you already know how broken traditional healthcare feels. One-size-fits-all treatments, preset dosages, zero flexibility. It's like being handed a contract you never agreed to. And trust me, I've signed enough bad deals to know how that feels. But now there's another way with hims and hers. So here's the truth. For years, I lived in a world where I didn't get to make my own choices. Every move dictated, every decision made. And let me tell you, when you finally get your control back, you never want to give it up again. That's what Hims and Hers delivers: control over your health, your goals, and your life. They're reimagining healthcare with you in mind. Personalized care for weight loss, for hair loss, for sexual health, mental health, because no two people are the same, and pretending they are, just a lie. And I respect this. No membership fees, no surprise bills, no hidden agenda. Just transparent pricing and real care you can access from anywhere. It's healthcare that finally puts you, not some faceless system, in charge. So here's the move. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Cohen. That's HIMS.com/Cohen. It's not available everywhere. Prescription products require provider consultation. See the website for full details. Important safety information and restrictions apply.
They're finding excuses also to take away voting rights from almost everybody you can imagine who might possibly not vote for the grand dictator, for the dear leader. It's really frightening, and we're not having a real conversation. And speaking of real conversation, you've had these really interesting topics up, but I want to add something for the mix for you. We have Trump obsessing about the Cracker Barrel, for God's sake, when there's health problems in this country, environmental problems in this country, when he's getting rid of windmills and we need more power for AI. And that's my point, AI. Michael, they just got rid of, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has been neutered. We're not going to have real unemployment numbers. You know that. He doesn't want those. But there's a frightening thing. I spent a lot of my time with young people, dynamic, idealistic, American and international young people who study in this country, who know coding, who care about the future, who want to be doctors, who want to get involved in things, who want to be leaders. The unemployment rate right now, the real unemployment rate of people 20 to 30 and older too, I think, is growing. You have corporate titans bragging about getting rid of 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people. We are not having a national conversation about the effects of AI and other factors on the employment of these people who care about this country, who want to make it better. I'm talking about American-born and amazing immigrants who've come here to study.
Sure.
We're cutting funding for research at universities. He's making it impossible for Harvard and other schools to do some really good things that they've done for this country in terms of making scientific advances. And then we're not talking about it, but there's a crisis, and that's what he's afraid of. That he knows someone has told him, as dumb as he is sometimes, he's also got this lizard-like instinct to know things. There's a really challenging time coming up with joblessness in this country. No politicians are having a real conversation about it. We've even have AI people saying that people are going to lose their jobs en masse.
Especially the young, especially the Gen Zers.
Yeah.
Right now, they're finding it nearly impossible to find work. And what do they think? That by throwing out the undocumented migrants, that these Gen Zers are going to start now going into the fields and picking strawberries or blueberries or becoming roofers and shit and shit like that? No, they don't want those jobs. You think they're going to get up, as you said, at 4 o'clock in the morning to go turn on the ovens and to learn how to make a fresh bagel? No. You think that they're the ones that now, by the way, you walk around the streets of Manhattan, best fucking pizza in the world, right? Best, I don't care, better than Italy. Our pizza in New York City is the best anywhere. You don't even see Italians anymore behind the counters.
They're all from Salvador.
They're all Mexican or from El Salvador.
And they're working their tails off.
They sure are. And you know the funny thing too? It's the same thing with like landscapers now. You find that they're El Salvadorian, they're Mexican, but they're always happy. They're always smiling. They're always just trying to please. Now go tell this American kid, go ahead, get onto the tractor, right, and start cutting the grass. Oh, by the way, you got to mulch it. You got to turn around and you got to fertilize it. How about like thanks, but no thanks? Is it paying $30 an hour? No.
Well, and construction and everything else. We need more housing in this country, right? So right now we're cracking down on the people who work 6 days a week, starting at 5 in the morning, to put on asphalt shingles. My kids aren't putting on asphalt shingles when it's 100 degrees out there. Your kids aren't doing that. So, but we're not, that's my point. This is really, again, out of the Roy Cohn playbook. If there's a real problem, you get celebrity or you get some crazy little gossip thing, or you just distract people. Trump has perfected that since the 1970s. And we, American people, Democrats, progressives, caring people, are suckers for that. We're not cutting through the fog. Where are the Democratic leaders? For God's sake, like, I voted for Republicans in my life and Democrats. I worked for a Republican state senator in New York. So I'm not the partisan that people say I am. I'm right. I care about this country. I care about our future. I care about our young people. I care about our environment. Where the heck are the Democrats? What happened to them? Chuck Schumer's like, we're going to deal with them. Get rid of these older Democrats. I'm not an ageist. Get rid of some of the younger ones too. Bring in new blood. Gavin Newsom is actually doing some really cool, interesting things because he knows how to play the Roy Cohn game. He brings attention to himself, but he uses humor instead of the anger that Trump uses, and humor can be just as effective.
Yeah. So again, using Roy as sort of the litmus test here, you know that Trump doesn't just throw his weight behind somebody for shits and giggles out of returned loyalty, right? Just look at me, for example. He did, however, throw his full weight behind RFK Jr. after legitimately watching one of the most humiliating performances by a cabinet secretary, HHS in this case, before Congress in recent memory. What's the political calculus there?
Yeah.
Why do you think Trump did that?
Well, first I have to tell you, I love what Jimmy Kimmel said. He calls him the Kennedy, the Secretary of Health and Human Sacrifice. I love that. That's like the perfect thing. And I have a colleague, Randy Loftus, who calls him Robert F. Measles Jr. and Secretary of State Marco Rubella and Florida Governor Ron Diphtheria. And President Donald Polio. So, Michael, this is one of the most important stories we could talk about, because our record of being leaders in the world in health, in longevity, in prosperity, in democracy is under attack. And Robert Kennedy, this is another classic Roy Cohn move. Robert Kennedy has a faction of these Make America Healthy Again people who, for some reason, have decided, based on false science, that vaccines are dangerous and so forth and so on. And Trump doesn't, if you watch him in the cabinet meeting, Trump doesn't like the way Kennedy takes the center stage and talks too much. He doesn't like him as a person, but he needs that faction. He needs him. Now, you and I know that at some point after the midterm non-elections, Trump will probably toss Kennedy aside. Everything's transactional with Trump. And Roy Cohn taught him that too. You use people as long as you can, and then you toss them out. And Trump did that to Roy Cohn. You're again, some of the people who are following you don't know this. Roy Cohn helped Trump with connecting him to the mob and to
he molded him.
Right. But then, speaking of the germaphobe in chief, when Roy Cohn got AIDS and Trump realized it was AIDS, he distanced himself figuratively and spiritually and emotionally from Roy Cohn. He basically left him alone at the end of his life. And he is transactional. He got what he needed from Roy Cohn. He moved on. By the way, when Trump had a prenup agreement that he had to do to screw his first wife, Ivanka, who made that prenup agreement? Roy Cohn did.
Right. When Trump, you mean Ivana?
Ivana, sorry, not Ivanka. when Trump, I wrote down another couple of things, but when Trump needed Abe Beame, the mayor of New York, to approve projects, Roy Cohn arranged that. But when Roy Cohn got AIDS, he was out like yesterday's trash in Trump's world. Roy, to his credit, Michael, you might not know this, but Roy, while he was transactional, he actually had a few friends he was incredibly loyal to that he did not expect anything back from. And I can tell you, because I'm his cousin, he let me into his life because I was writing a story for Vanity Fair. I watched him and I saw him with his friend, Cy Newhouse, who was a publisher, and some other ones. He cared deeply about them. He loved them. As sick as he was in his head, I'm not talking about AIDS, as evil as he was, he had actually some little piece of friendship, of heart. Trump is all about Trump. Yeah, Melania, he's protecting Melania right now. Do you think if he could get rid of Melania at some point in the future, he probably would get rid of, I mean, not physically get rid, not kill her, but he doesn't care about her in any way. She's just, he needs her as a prop right now.
Yeah. So, hey,
but does he love her? Does he talk to her about his day? Does he talk to her about his dreams? Does he talk about what he thinks for the United States, which he doesn't think about?
I got to be honest with you. I have seen them have that type of conversation.
I bet not recently, though. I
haven't been around. I haven't been around either of them in a while. Yeah. So
anyway, Michael, you suffered for him. You know this. He used you as long as it was. You're the classic example of what Roy Cohn did to many people and what Trump does. He used you as long as it was convenient, and they went out. And by the way, I said this to you before. I'll say it again in public. The Biden administration should have pardoned you, should have made apologies to you, should have made restitution to you. What they did to you was not as evil as what Trump 1.0 did, but it was inexcusable.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably equal, on par, if not even worse, because, Biden should and tried to portray himself as being better. In fact, to show you that he's actually as big, if not a bigger piece of shit. All right. What he did, he said to people like me and other people like a Lev Parnas. He said to us, go fuck yourself in Macy's window. I'm not taking care of you, but you know who I'm going to take care of? My son, the drug addict, running around with an illegal firearm. Yeah. I'm going to give him a full and complete pardon from the day the earth was created till the day that we sign this pardon. Anything that he's ever done is now pardoned, because he deserves it. Well, what about people like me and others? You think so? He didn't give a shit about anybody else. Joe Biden was full of shit, and that's the problem with the whole Democratic Party. They don't stand up for one another in the same extent that Republicans do. This MAGA or MAHA or any other group that you want to call within that MAGA organization, they only care about themselves as a collective, right? So an attack on one MAGA is an attack on all. And that's why right now, today, as a result of the Epstein file, that you see a real serious split, a tectonic type split in the foundation, in the rock of MAGA. Because when you have people like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Thomas Massey, these were loyalists, right? When you start seeing people like them turning around and saying, that's bullshit. We have for years now listened to this story, the story about how this is a Democratic cult like usage of sex trafficking and rape of children, right, by the Democrats. Now all of a sudden you're turning around when you claim that you have the file. Pam Bondi said she has the list on her desk, and now you're not going to release it. You're making us look stupid. They stand together. Democrats don't do that. Democrats is all themselves.
The other schism in the Republicans is really small, and unfortunately is way too small and way too late. You had a hearing in the Senate where Robert F. Kennedy goes up and speaks nonsense as usual. Yep. We have a measles outbreak in this country. You had 3 Republican senators, 2 of them are doctors, say, oh, well, we're not too happy about you. Dudes, you guys voted, you guys approved this guy.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you on this one, Dave, but what's his name?
There was a senator from North Carolina who's a doctor.
Balsano or something like that, who happens to be a doctor. He turned around and he excoriated Robert Kennedy. Basically said to him, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I've been practicing medicine my entire life before becoming a member of Congress. And what you're doing it's wrong. And he's the one that turned around and said that at the confirmation hearing, you turned around and you said you were not going to do this. So tell us what changed. And of course, Kennedy couldn't tell him.
Michael,
I never said that.
These guys are doctors, and the other one is a business person. They confirmed him. I'm sorry, all you had to do was see Kennedy on the stump. He said all these things. He's been opposed to vaccines. By the way, when he was a kid, he was vaccinated. But whatever. It's just what's happening here. And this isn't to downplay the Epstein thing you're talking about, because that's a serious women's rights issue. I care about that. But right now we have an ongoing crisis. We're going to have polio, measles, all these diseases that should have been we're going back to 1850.
Not should have, that they have been extinguished for the last 50 years.
And so now 3 Republican senators are saying, oh my gosh, this is not so good. Hey, dudes, where were you for the last 8 months? Where were you when we knew that Kennedy was going to do these things? It's so frightening, Michael. I keep saying I spent time in developing countries. I spent time in countries that were in turmoil. Peru, when the military was on the street. Colombia, when the drug barons, the Medellin and the Cali cartels seemed to be taking over killing the Supreme Court, taking over the country. And what I'm seeing unfolding in our amazing country is just as scary. That one institution after another. And what's happening? You can distract people by saying, oh, the Smithsonian, they shouldn't be, they're so woke. People are busy. People are trying to make trying to keep their families together, pay for health care, do all the things we're doing. It's very easy in this age of Twitter and Fox News and everything else to distract people from the real issues. And Trump and his cronies are masters at that.
I want to say this, Dave. I have a little bit of a different theory on why Trump is propping up RFK Jr., why he threw his full weight behind him and so on. For whatever anybody thinks about RFK, I've had him on this Mea Culpa podcast. I think he's a fucking maniac. I don't think he has half a clue what he's talking about as it relates to vaccines. I don't think he has half a clue when he starts turning around and making claims that the vaccinations are what's causing autism. All right. Medically, we already know what causes autism, and it's the male sperm. After a certain age, it mutates. There's science behind it. He wants it. What does he have going for him? His last name. And Trump sees that as what? He sees that as a trophy. That he sees Robert Kennedy Jr. as part of that dynasty, the Kennedy dynasty. And guess what? That dynasty fucking works for me. It's like a mob boss, right? That motherfucker works for me. All right. And that's why I think that he has him propped up. Certainly it is not. It's definitely not because he's a great administrator. He's not. It's not because he's an incredible epidemiologist or has half a clue what he's talking about. Yeah. He doesn't. It's all about the last name. He's using him as a prop.
But Michael, this brings us back to Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn shaped Trump in an era when it was a big deal to be on the cover of Time magazine, when it was a big deal to know Bobby Kennedy's dad. It was a big deal for those kind of things that shaped so much of the 20th century America to be associated with those. But right now, that's a weird thing about Trump. He's holding on to it. I will bet you that to 80% of Americans under age 60 or under age 50, while Trump loves to have that name around him, it doesn't mean it's lost its meaning to people under age 55 or 60. But Trump has to hold on to things. I think you're right about that. But it's not really to shape the population, maybe some older people. It's because he lives in this other era. He still loves the fact that he has on the front page of the New York Times or Time magazine. And listen, I love journalists. I think journalists are valid. But that's not what Americans care about right now, who's on the cover of a news magazine. But Trump lives in that old age. So yeah, he has another trophy for him is having a Kennedy in his orbit, a Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
It's not just in his orbit. It's not just that he's in his orbit. It's that he works for him. And on any given day, if I want to shit can him, I could shit can him. If any given day I want him to get on his knees and kiss the ring, he'll get on his knees and he'll kiss the ring. For Trump, that's a big thing.
That's a big thing. It's so much about control and power. Yes. And you were subjected to that. And thank God for this country, you are not anymore. But most people in his thrall don't know how to get out of his thrall. And all those cabinet secretaries kissing his whatever it was despicable.
Well, I want to talk to you for a quick second about this SCO summit that was hosted by Xi Jinping. Putin, Kim, Modi, Xi, of course, this love fest that Trump somehow, he uses that word all the time. He's got this great relationship with Kim Jong-un. It's like a love fest. He said the same thing about Putin and then same thing about Modi. So these four are walking together, this axis of evil, right? All smiling, having this love fest. You ever tried launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. I mean, when I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%, you hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. I mean, not naming names or anything, right? I mean, need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen. Let me ask you this, right? What do you think is behind, the first question, behind Trump's admiration for these authoritarian alliances?
Okay, well, that's a good question, and it's going to lead me to something, because I think you hit something we didn't talk about yet, which is so crucial. Trump saw from Roy Cohn, again, that if you just keep bullying and charging forward, you get power. Power begets power. Money begets money. And Trump learned that, and his father was distant. We could do all kinds of psychoanalytical stuff about. He loves a good, strong father figure, I think, and he wants one, and he loves Putin. He loves these dictators, but they're not loving him back. And this is really, Michael, well, America has been obsessed with Cracker Barrel signage or whatever. This is the story of the year in alliances and partnerships. It took us decades and to build up, like a pretty good partnership with India, despite some problems, are crumbling in minutes. You got the leaders of these countries, some of the world's leading autocrats, walking hand in hand. And what happened to Trump's great friendships with them? You go on the train in New York, you don't hear people talking about this. It's complicated, scary, but that, you just hit it, Michael. There's a realignment of very powerful countries that have more and more money from oil, and the world's most important consumer population, India, aligning against us. Russia shouldn't even be in the mix. My God, Russia's like, you say this, don't you, all the time? It's like, or Scott Galloway says, it's basically like a glorified gas station. Okay, their military's been embarrassed. They've lost 1 million young people in this Ukraine war, but now they're more powerful because they're allied with India, with South Korea, and with China. That's really scary. This is like a nihilistic scenario. It's great. And you know that I lived overseas. I spent a lot of time with diplomats from this country and other countries. Okay, to be honest with you, some of the other countries the diplomats are even more sophisticated in language and culture and history. But we had pound for pound, we have some amazing diplomats who cared about this country, who worked hard for this country, who were afraid of what Putin could do. And they've been sacked, they've been sidelined, and we have no national security infrastructure. We've got the FBI, which was doing brilliant counterterrorism work. It's been destroyed, basically. And now we have our enemies are allied against us. I never thought I'd see this, Michael. I thought Putin would sort of stay nice to Trump for a while because Putin can get stuff from Trump. But Putin just bitch slapped him, basically. It's incredible.
I think so.
I never would have predicted that in the first 8 months.
Me too.
Horrible thing. By the way, I was just doing some calculations, and this makes me like so depressed. I'm not going to sleep tonight. We have, assuming there's just one second term of Trump, we have 1,230 odd days left of this clown in charge of us. 1,200, and imagine what just happened with that summit, that group meeting. Imagine what could happen in the future. It's so scary, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that's scary, you look at the job numbers. I think they said that, was it 22,000 jobs were created? It should have been 75 at the bare minimum. Numbers have been off literally for the last few months. So what do? Well, Roy taught him right. You fire. If someone gives you bad news, fucking fire them. And that way that they're not there anymore. Trump's unfavorability numbers, despite what he wants to say, that he's 93% favorable. Yeah. In Mago land, which only constitutes about 38% of the Republican Party, has nothing to do with independents or obviously Democrats. Look, let me say this to you, Dave, because the hour goes by, unfortunately, way too fast. All right. I want you to give me your bottom line. After Epstein, after the Pentagon rebrand, after RFK Jr.'s nonsensical rantings, after this G summit, the SCO, after the shit jobs collapse, after now, what do they say? Unemployment is now at 4.3%. It ticked up. What does this moment tell us about the danger of Trump's second term? And the PR that we should be expecting to hear from him to try to convince us all that everything there is good.
Well, let's put it this way. First, I'm going to tell you an anecdote. The Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, laid this out. It was a bunch of billionaires who wanted to get rid of 100 years of progress, of the New Deal, the Great Society, of Social Security, of Medicare, of regulations of Wall Street, of environmental rules. A friend of mine at the State Department was just talking to me about that. But Michael, you started me talking about my horrible, heinous cousin, Roy Cohn. Let's go back to him at the end now, because this is an important lesson. And it comes from when Trump first met Roy Cohn in early 1970s. Trump had a problem, which is why he went to this lawyer who already was famous and prominent and known as a nasty bastard. Trump said, hey, the Justice Department is investigating us, as I said, my family business, because we don't rent to people who are black. They wrote the N on index cards when someone came to rent for the N word or for another N word. So basically, the Justice Department had a perfectly airtight case against Trump for discrimination in housing, which was a big deal in the 1970s. And what happened is illustrative of what's going on right now. Roy Cohn said, you're going to attack. You're going to deny. You're going to distract. The three things I said at the beginning, which Trump did. And what Trump did because of Roy Cohn was he countersued the U.S. Justice Department, and he sued them for $100 million, saying basically they brought this false claim against him. Now, he actually settled. He knew that he was guilty of this. They settled for it, but they had this public $100 million lawsuit against the government, which went nowhere. But the impression of New Yorkers was, wow, this guy is strong. This guy is right. This guy is a fighter. He just sued the government for $100 million, which was a lot of money in those days. And the suit went nowhere, of course. He lost against the Justice Department, but the enduring image of this autocrat in training, this bully bastard, was, I'm a winner. And so fast forward to 2025. What's he doing? He's distracting. He's denying unemployment problems, Epstein problems. He's he's attacking. And so where do you, if you're a busy person living your life and trying to take care of your family, you can't keep track of all this stuff. And so the Department of War, the Epstein files, the unemployment, the Bureau of Labor statistics, which has been decimated, he's going to manipulate the hell out of us. And Michael, I said to you a while back that I thought I was an optimist. I thought things would be good. I think Americans are good-hearted people. I still think that about Americans. They're good-hearted people. They care about their neighbors. They help people in trouble. But right now, we have ICE distracting us and rounding up people and scapegoating people. This is right out of Germany in 1930s. We have military on our own streets in LA and DC. This is really frightening. And we have Democrats who are saying, well, we're just going to get back at the next election. Wake up, dudes. You're stupid and you're foolish and you're ignorant. And I can tell you, because I watched Roy Cohn over the years, that the Roy Cohn playbook is going to go into full force. If you think it hasn't happened already, it's going to. And meanwhile, the most fierce enemies of this country are banding together. Trump's good friends are banding together against us. Imagine the intelligence they're sharing on us. Imagine what they could do to our power system. Imagine the kind of cyber attacks that we're going to get. If you think it's bad now, I can tell you this stuff is going to unfold many times over. And Ukraine, a country that's our ally, that we care about, that's a bulwark of Europe, is under siege every day. And this wimpy Congress has done nothing about that. We're in full-fledged crisis mode, Michael. And I told you I deal with young, idealistic people who are immigrants to this country, who are fifth generations Americans, and they're scared and they don't know what to do. And our generation, because I'm kind of probably your age, what the hell are we doing?
Nothing. They're waiting for, I hate to say, people like you, people like me, people like the folks at Midas Touch, my buddy Lev Parnas, Malcolm Nance. They're waiting for a knight in shining armor to swoop in and to save them. And that person is not Gavin Newsom. I tell you for sure, it ain't fucking Chuck Schumer. It ain't Hakeem Jeffries. It ain't Cory Booker. It certainly ain't Nancy Pelosi. All right? There's people that are out there. The problem is Democrats. It's all about me, me, me. Whereas this GOP, they've made themselves into a collective MAGA. They all wear the same shirt. They all wear the same hat. And they all carry the same banner, and they all spew the same stupidity. But with that said, David, we keep fighting. That's what we do. We keep fighting. So I want to thank you for joining me, my brother, on Mea Culpa. And I'm going to have you come join me on my Substack as well. I want to thank you for joining me. You helped to explain a lot.
Yeah, and my parting lesson, Michael, is maybe we should read the Roy Cohn playbook. We who care about this country, who care about the environment, who care about the young people, who care about immigrants, we should read that and counterattack. I'm not talking about with guns. I'm talking about with words. I'm talking about with ideas.
Amen to that. Dave, thank you, my brother.